When a woman hasn't been touched, not just physically, but emotionally, something inside her begins to ache in a way she cannot explain. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's quiet, dangerously quiet. Because when her body forgets the warmth of another heartbeat, her mind begins to speak in a language only the right man can hear. And most men don't know how to listen. She doesn't say, "I miss intimacy." She doesn't admit, "I want to be seen, felt, chosen." Instead, she changes. And if you know what to look for, you'll see her before she ever reaches for you. She becomes more aware of her presence. The way she walks slows down as if the world deserves to notice her. Her eyes stay on you half a second longer than necessary. Not asking, not begging, but inviting. When a woman hasn't been intimate in a long time, she doesn't chase, she signals. And the signals are subtle, but they are never accidental. She starts to lean into moments, not because she wants attention, but because her body remembers what it feels like to be desired. Even if she pretends she doesn't care, she touches her neck when she speaks. Not to seduce, but to remind herself she is still a woman. She laughs a little softer, she listens a little deeper, she stands a little closer than necessary. Because when she hasn't felt chosen in a long time, she begins to test the world to see who notices the quiet hunger behind her eyes. She isn't desperate, she's awake. And that awakening is dangerous because it carries a fire she has kept hidden for too long. You see, a woman who has gone without intimacy does not lose desire. She becomes more aware of it. And awareness is the most seductive energy there is. She begins to create moments where silence can speak. She lets conversations linger. She holds eye contact when the room goes quiet. She allows tension to breathe between words. Because when she feels seen, even for a moment, something inside her softens. And when she feels understood, something inside her opens. Not her body, her presence. This is how she calls you closer. Not with words, not with promises, but with energy. She watches how you respond. Do you rush? Do you retreat? Or do you stay comfortable in the silence she creates because only the man who can hold that silence earns the right to step closer? And when he does, everything changes. She doesn't need to say she wants you. Her stillness it for her. This is how longing whispers before it ever speaks. And the more time passes, the more she feels that quiet space inside her grow. Not empty, just waiting. Waiting to be met, but waiting to be seen. Waiting to be touched by a presence that feels real. So she begins to speak in another way through tone, through stillness, through the way her eyes soften when you say her name. She becomes selective with her attention, not because she is cold, but because she is learning the value of her own energy. She gives it only where she feels safe to open. And when she opens, even slightly, it changes the temperature of the room. Her voice lowers when she talks to you, not to perform, but because something inside her relaxes. She asks you questions that feel simple but carry depth. What makes you feel alive? What do you miss? What do you crave when no one is watching? Because she is searching for a mirror, someone who understands the language of longing. When a woman hasn't been intimate for a long time, she stops settling for surface. She wants presence. She wants truth. She wants a moment that feels like a doorway. So she creates pauses in conversation. She lets silence stretch. She watches how you respond when there's nothing left to say. Do you fill it with noise or do you hold it like something sacred? Because in that silence, she is offering you access not to her body, but to her world. And if you meet her there without trying to control it, without trying to rush she feels something she hasn't felt in a long time. Sin chosen safe. This is where desire begins to live again, not in urgency, but in connection. She notices the way you stand when she enters the room, the way your eyes change when you look at her, the way your voice slows when you speak because she is listening for something deeper than words. She is listening for intention, and when she feels it, something inside her finally exhales. She doesn't need to ask for your attention. Her presence already has it. This is how she draws you in without ever reaching. And somewhere between the glances, the quiet pauses, the gentle tension in the air, She realizes something. She is no longer numb. She feels again, not loudly, not desperately, but deeply. When a woman hasn't been intimate for a long time, she becomes more sensitive to energy. She can feel when someone is present, and when someone is only pretending. So she begins to choose carefully who she lets stand close, who she lets hear her silence, who she allows to see the part of her that has been waiting. She doesn't rush the connection. She allows it to unfold like a quiet flame growing warmer with every shared moment. Her smile becomes softer, but her gaze becomes stronger because she is no longer searching for distraction. She is searching for resonance. She notices when you slow down for her, when you listen instead of perform, when you meet her eyes without trying to own them. Those moments awaken something ancient inside her. Not hunger, but recognition. And when that recognition happens, she feels safe enough to let herself be seen. She shares pieces of her world, her fears, her quiet dreams, the parts of her she usually keeps hidden. Not to impress you, but to invite you. Because intimacy for her is not about closeness. It's about connection. This is how she tells you she is ready. Not with words, not with promises, but with openness. She lingers in the moment. She lets the energy stay. She allows the tension to exist without needing to escape it. And in that space, something beautiful begins. Because when she finally feels seen again, she remembers who she is, and that remembering changes everything. This is how longing transforms into connection, and connection into something real. And now she no longer hides the fact that she feels. She allows herself to be present in her own body again, not in a way that demands, but in a way that invites. She becomes more aware of her breath, the way her shoulders rise when you're near, the way her voice slows when she feels understood. Because when a woman has gone without closeness for a long time, she learns to recognize safety before she recognizes desire, and safety is what lets her soften. She begins to share small truths, things she never says out loud, moments she thought no one would care about, not to seek validation, but to feel seen. She notices how you hold space for her, whether you interrupt or whether you stay, because staying is the first form of intimacy. When she feels that you are present, not just physically, but emotionally, something inside her begins to open. She smiles without guarding it. She relaxes into the silence. She lets herself be exactly where she is, and in that moment, she no longer feels alone. This is how she draws closer. Not with words, not with promises, but with presence. She doesn't need to reach for you. You already feel her. And that feeling is where connection is born. And slowly, she stops pretending she is unaffected. She lets the moments linger. She allows the connection to stay just a little longer than it should. Not because she wants to rush, but because she finally feels alive, inside the quiet. She notices the smallest shifts. The way your tone changes when you say her name, the way your presence feels heavier, warmer, closer, and instead of pulling away, she leans into the feeling. Not physically, but emotionally, she becomes softer, yet more aware. She listens not just to what you say, but to what you don't, because she has learned that longing lives in the spaces between words. When a woman hasn't been intimate in a long time, she begins to treasure the unseen. The glance that lingers, the pause that feels full, the feels shared. She allows herself to be vulnerable, not weak, not small, but open. And that openness changes everything. She no longer needs to chase connection. She becomes it. And when you feel her presence, you realize her. This is how she calls you closer. Not with noise, not with demand, but with a quiet, magnetic stillness. And now the space between you feels different. Not empty, not awkward, but alive. She senses it in the way the room feels warmer, in the way time seems to slow when you are near. When a woman has gone without intimacy for too long, she becomes deeply aware of energy. She feels when something is real, and when it is only noise, so she leans into what feels real, not with urgency, but with intention. She lets her guard lower. Not all at once, but enough for you to notice. Her laughter becomes softer. Her eyes become more expressive. Her presence becomes more grounded because she is no longer performing. She is being. She notices how you respond when she shares something personal. Do you hold it gently or do you rush past it? And when you hold it, something inside her relaxes. That relaxation is trust. And trust is the doorway to closeness. She no longer hides the way she feels, not with words, but with energy. You feel it before you understand it. The quiet pull, the unspoken invitation, the sense that something meaningful is unfolding. And this is how she lets you in. And now she no longer questions what she feels. She accepts it not as weakness, but as truth. Because when a woman has gone without intimacy for a long time, she stops running from her own heart. She begins to trust the quiet pull inside her. She notices how she feels when you are near. Calmer, more present, more like herself. And instead of resisting, she allows it. She gives you pieces of her world, her thoughts, her memories, the parts of her she rarely shows. Not to impress you, but to connect. Because connection is what she has been missing. Not attention, not validation, but depth. She watches how you hold her vulnerability. Do you honor it? Do you respect it? Do you stay? And when you do, she feels safe enough to open a little more. This is how intimacy begins to grow. Again, not in haste, but in trust. She doesn't need to say what she wants. Her presence already does. And when you feel it, you understand. This is how she lets herself be seen. And now she begins to soften into herself. Not because she is certain, but because she is finally honest. Honest about the longing she kept hidden. Honest about the quiet she learned to ignore. When a woman hasn't been intimate in a long time, she stops pretending she doesn't feel. She allows herself to be present with what is, and that presence changes her. She becomes more gentle with herself. She no longer rushes moments away. She allows them to linger because she understands now connection is not something you chase. It's something you create. She creates it through listening, through stillness, through being real. And when she feels that same reality reflected in you, she lets herself stay. She no longer fears closeness. She welcomes it because she remembers now she was never empty. She was only waiting for a moment that felt safe enough to open. And slowly she understands that the ache she carried was never about absence. It was about possibility. The possibility of being met, of being understood, of being held in a way that feels safe. When a woman hasn't been intimate in a long time, she learns the difference between attention and connection. One feels loud, the other feels calm. So she chooses calm. She lets herself be where she is, not trying to control the moment, not trying to define it, just feeling it. And in that feeling, she begins to trust again. Trust the silence, trust the space, trust herself. She no longer hides behind distraction. She allows the quiet to speak because in that quiet she feels you. Not your words, not your actions, your presence. And when she feels that, she knows. This is how connection begins. And now the moment feels complete. Not finish, but whole. She no longer feels like something is missing. She feels like something is opening. When a woman has gone without intimacy for a long time and finally feels seen, she doesn't rush forward. She stays present because presence is where connection lies. She allows herself to feel the warmth of being understood, the comfort of not needing to perform, the relief of not needing to explain. And in that space, she remembers who she is. Not the version shaped by absence, but the version shaped by truth. She is not searching anymore, she is becoming. And when you feel her presence, you feel something shift inside you too. Because connection is never one-sided. This is how longing transforms into meaning, and meaning into something real. If this spoke to something inside you, take a moment to sit with it. Connection begins with awareness. If you want more reflections like this, subscribe, share, and stay close. Because sometimes the quietest truths are the ones that change us most.